Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman, Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. It is Thursday, August 20th, 2020. Time to get to the lottery store, I suppose, and, I don't know, win enough money to hang around in post-apocalyptic America and have no influence whatsoever. I guess you can sit on a pile of money or sit under a pile of money when everything comes crashing down. Maybe that will offer you some protection. In the meantime, I guess you can get some luxury items to sit with through the apocalypse. Anyway, we don't really need to speak about things that way. There's plenty more, of course, to round up. Greg Dworkin will be here shortly to help us do that. It was night 3 of the convention. Big names coming out, making the big speeches. Night 4 still to come. Bigger names still. And, of course, the nomination and acceptance speech of Joe Biden, who, as it turns out, is the Democratic nominee, or at least will be. Later tonight, I guess he is now. He was officially named during the Call of the States that we enjoyed so much during the second night. That's right. But the speech is what will make it official. Not really. The vote made it official. But the speech will cement it in the minds of most people. So big night for him to declare what it is he's running for, what it's all about, what his vision is for America, et cetera, et cetera. But, of course, if you're not into that, how about getting rid of Trump will be enough for you. Maybe that will excite you. Plenty to round up, as I said, from yesterday's speeches. Great ones from Kamala Harris. And were we not very well prepared for that moment during her speech in which she called out and thanked her Alpha Kappa Alpha sisters and the Divine Nine, which we learned a lot about yesterday and speaking with Denise Oliver Velez. Thanks very much for coming on and giving us that background and insight into what was going on. We all kind of felt like insiders, well, if not exactly insiders. So we knew at least what the hell was going on. Maybe you were caught by surprise by other parts of the speech, but luckily, if you have a nice, diverse timeline on Twitter or lots of friends who can inform you, you might have had a chance to catch up probably after the fact, if you're like me, about who else she was calling out. I did notice a great deal of excitement about her call out to using a term that escapes me offhand, but it looked like chitties or something quite like that. We'll have to check in on that with our neighborhood linguists. But this part I do remember watching as Indian Americans rejoiced in seeing or hearing that called out. Apparently that's the terminal. And was it in Tamil? Is that right? The language that she was using there to call out to her Indian aunties, as they like to say. I have the, of course, unfortunate East Coast New Jersey-ish accent that makes me pronounce A-U-N-T, or want to pronounce A-U-N-T as aunt, as opposed to aunt. But, just a close familial relationship call out there in a way, coded in language that was meant to reach out to, grab hold of, and include, for the first time in such a speech, the Indian American folks who are listening. Yes, okay, right. And I see at the same time, confusing my speech here, the note from Greg bringing that up. Yeah, it is Tamil, so we've got that correct too. And that's a nice call out too. It's good to get the language correct. Greg's got all the quotes here that he can share with us. And in the meantime, let's see. Other things that came up. Oh, I don't know if you noticed. Former President of the United States, Barack Obama, also had a little speech in there. It was a very big speech. And in fact, a considerable amount, I was paying attention to this, having an ear for this now when I sometimes edit the shows or edit people's submissions for the shows for time. I begin to notice how big the silence gaps occasionally are in between sentences. And sometimes it's intentional for emphasis, which was the case with a lot of what Obama was saying. That was the unspoken let that sink in. You can't really put that. It doesn't sound very presidential when you put that in your speech. But he was saying a lot of things that, of course, needed to be allowed to sink in. And his silences were there for that point. Although it did occur to me with the big fights over how much time people were allotted to speak for this reason or that reason, you could have fit another whole congressional member of Congress could have spoken in the silences that Obama got to occupy. But, you know, one, it's a rhetorical device that he makes great use of, and two, he's the former president and he gets the time. So lots of great interest in his speech, in her speech, and I think everybody knows which of the two speeches we're talking about. I don't even have to name names. Big night. I think everybody agrees that it went pretty well. Donald Trump reacted, I think, as predicted. I mean, it was as if, well, actually, I guess it was as if Hillary Clinton was entirely right when she said that Donald Trump was somebody, the reason you couldn't trust him as president was that he was somebody who could be manipulated with a tweet. These weren't tweets, of course, these were speeches, but calculated to elicit these reactions, and they did. Trump was sitting there watching television all night, along with the rest of us. I mean, at least we all elected to do the same thing. That was the first time we've been on the same page in a long time. But, of course, he reacted with angry, all caps, rage tweets, and they took note of that if you watched the convention on any of the channels that afterwards offered up commentary, as I did. I just flipped on CNN just to see what was going on. And, they noticed, and they spent a lot of time analyzing the fact that the president was sitting there rage tweeting. In fact, Anderson Cooper actually called him out at one point saying, not only can Trump not ever give a speech like the one that Barack Obama gave, but the best he can do in terms of communication with the country is to tweet, to sit on the toilet tweeting. He actually called that out, tweeting from the bathroom. And he probably got 100% right there. All right. Well, Greg is here. Skype worked the first time because I remembered to run the pre-show test. So that's good news. We'll celebrate it by allowing him to talk. Good morning, Greg.
Hey, why would we do that?
I don't know. Seemed like the thing to do at the time.
So, for those of you who are goal-oriented, there's 4 days until the Republican National Convention starts, and 40 days until the first presidential debate, and 48 days until the vice presidential debate, and 56 days until the second presidential debate, and 63 until the third, and 75 days until the election. And for those of you who are, more task-oriented, do it. And if we're going to describe the convention yesterday, sure. I mean, so many people saw it. Basically, they said what you thought they were going to say, and that thing really worked. And you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Okay.
It's interesting in just so many different ways. Now, my overarching theory of the convention is also the overarching theory to me of the election.
Okay, that seems convenient.
That is to say, you're looking for a theme. People are trying to they talked about this. They were going for Republicans on day 1 or day 2, and then on day 3 it was all this diversity and how are they going to tie it together, and then how is Joe Biden going to meet the mark? Well, it depends what mark. According to the Republicans, he can barely make it out of his own basement by himself, and according to the regular pundits, after Obama, I don't, but really, all of this is just trying to present yourself as a sane alternative to what's going on, and the messaging in the convention and the subsequent campaign is, if you didn't vote in 2016, you made a mistake, but you can rectify it by voting this time and voting for me.
Okay.
And so everything they're saying is some sort of, variation on that. Now, Hillary Clinton was pretty much upfront about it. But it's fascinating to look at. So let's just take a look at the convention itself. You already alluded to, and yes, thank you for Denise for being on yesterday and explaining to us. This is Keith Boykin tweeting, probably the first time AKA and the Divine Nine were mentioned in a Democratic convention speech from a party nominee. And
Oh, yeah,
that's
them.
probably
I
true.
know them, sure. Yeah.
But, at least you're right. We at least knew what that was.
We were all like, oh, yeah, we're all
Yeah,
into
we know
that
what
now.
that is. But not to pretend that we're subject matter experts on it. Denise is. We're not. We're just clued in because we asked.
Yes, we were just saying, I heard those words.
Yeah. Unless
We had
you've
an
tried,
understanding.
said
We
Seward Stevens,
gained a
to
lot.
fill 4 nights in which everybody knows what's going to happen before it does, it might be hard for you to realize what a hell of a thing that the DNC has pulled off. They reinvented the event. They produced a phenomenal amount of video. They made it work.
Good
So well done,
content.
Stephanie Cutter.
Yeah. I guess that's who we get to thank for this.
Right? Or just the commenter right after that, Risa Feely won. They brought the nominating convention into the 21st century. I thought it was fantastic. It felt personal, but not small. It was expansive, and it was remarkable. And what you had, because of the lack of crowds, you didn't have interruptions, and you had the people speaking looking directly in camera to you in your living room or dining room or kitchen or, Trump flotilla or wherever it is you're watching it from, your houseboat. And it was very personal in that sense, in the way that television can, and the visuals are everything in TV. You might hear what they're saying, you might remember what they're saying, but you read the chyron on the bottom, and that's what you remember. Or you remember the backdrop. I don't remember the exact words of the guy from Rhode Island, but there was this plate of calamari and this big guy telling you better eat it or whatever.
He didn't even have to say it.
He didn't.
It's
It's the visual. That's the whole
I don't even
point.
like
And
calamari.
so,
I think I'll be afraid not
what's
to
the visual? The visual is everybody. It's a big country. And the beautiful, stunningly well-produced videos of showing this country and showing everybody there just plain work. Now, people don't watch these things. Certainly viewership on the regular channels is down compared to 4 years ago, but they're kind of missing the point that digital is up. I still don't have the digitals in 2016, but the fact that they're up is stated by the campaign. Then we got 10 million people. It's not clear that 10 million people watched streaming or online 4 years ago. It was a totally different thing.
Yeah.
So expecting this to be the Walter Cronkite convention and David Brinkley and all the balloons are going to drop. I mean, I've got a lot of friends, Twitter friends, acquaintances, people I follow, people follow me, talking about this, who were sort of semi-insulted the first night but got over it. Because I said, the old fart pundits are really just, they can't stand change. And so they're, well, I missed the balloon drops. I missed the in-person roll call. Nobody misses the in-person roll call.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
This
was
great. Yeah.
This is like one of the highlights of the convention. We'll see what the Republicans can do to match it next week. But, it did the job. And the fact that people are watching online and not watching on television, cable, whatever, is part of 2020 America. Get used to it. Plus, of course, the people that don't watch are just going to learn about it from the headlines the next day. So if they read that the production, aesthetics were terrific, is what they'll take away. And then they'll see the little clip on YouTube. And that's how people get the news.
That's how I get it.
That's how everybody gets it. So
well,
I don't know who you were watching before you turned to CNN. I was watching MSNBC because, having on several other nights tried all of the other stations, C-SPAN doesn't do high def, so I like seeing nice sharp images. And MSNBC made the executive editorial decision to just play the convention. And the only time that they would speak is they might interrupt to say, okay, here's what's coming next for about 30 seconds, and then that's about it. So they played everything except for Jennifer Hudson's musical piece. But you saw, and then, watching it, then we had the analysis afterwards. And again, one of my favorite people, they had Rachel Maddow, they had Joy Reid, and they had Nicole Wallace, who were so properly socially distanced that you couldn't have all three of them on the screen at the same time unless you took a wide shot that looked like a football stadium.
Yeah, though I would like to have seen it.
And they were great, but Nicole Wallace was just fantastic, and especially in analyzing Obama's speech. She stepped back and said, having been in the White House, the visceral anger and fury and frustration at being a president and watching somebody dismantle your country
Yeah.
and basically calling the intelligence community Nazis, which is what he did, you know,
Yeah.
and going to the CIA and standing in front of the wall of stars and making it about yourself. The fury that people who care about what they're doing just came out in his speech. And what I thought happened is that Obama properly conveyed a sense of warning, of rumbling anxiety about what was going on here, followed by Kamala Harris doing hope. And I thought it worked just fine. And it wasn't a question of comparing her speech to his speech. He is a very practiced, speech giver. He, more than anybody else in the entire convention so far, seems to have mastered the pauses that you need when you don't have a crowd.
Yes.
He didn't rush through the speech. He did it slowly with pauses. It was perfect. And then Kamala had this speech in front of what would be a stadium or a crowd or a venue which would have a ton of people, and they actually pulled back a little bit and saw that there was only a few people that she was speaking to. Mm-hmm. And I saw the old fart critics saying, "Oh, that didn't work. That was a mistake." Actually, it wasn't. It conveyed the whole idea that this is really going on, and it's because of the pandemic, and they don't have to say it. They don't have to push that right in your face. Everybody knows life is different because of the pandemic. And this was yet another different way of just reinforcing the fact that real stuff is going on.
Yeah.
So I thought that the whole night worked great. I thought I love the roll call. I don't think anything's going to replace that. But I thought last night with Gabby Giffords, who was just tugging at your hearts, and then domestic violence, and then talking about immigration and how that fits in, plus a big chunk on climate, which you never really see in the Democratic convention or any other convention. You're not going to see it from the Republicans who wanted, drill and add more. I mean, it was good. It was the Democratic constituency last night, whereas it was the Republican, I want you to vote for us constituency, perhaps on other nights. But again, the overarching thing isn't so much I want you Republicans and now I want you Democrats and we're a big tent. It's more like, look, all of you who didn't vote, just get off. Whoever your party is, whatever your different reasoning is, just get off the sidelines and get involved. And here's your permission structure. Yesterday it was for Republicans. Today it's for Democrats. It's, for a younger audience. Mm-hmm. And, just do it.
All right. I think we should. I mean, I think they figured correctly we would respond to this. And we did. Yeah, it was a well done everything. So I think a lot of people were very happy with the way it came off last night. And the speeches were good ones. I guess we
good
could
enough. I mean, I didn't expect to be watching for 2 hours every night for 4 nights, but I find myself, it's a pretty good TV show. I am.
Well, the TV, I watched for the first time on
Plus
TV.
the commercials.
Yesterday. Yeah, that was true. That was helpful. The names were big enough that my wife got interested, and that meant the TV could be on instead of watching on the laptop. Although she didn't watch all the speeches. That's true. But when the big names came out, she wanted to see what they had to say. And a lot of people kind of, wrapped up, but we had some evening meetings to take care of. Everyone wanted them wrapped up so that they could go and turn on a TV. Say, what is Barack Obama's coming back? What's he going to say about this lunatic?
Yeah, and that speech was pretty phenomenal in so many different ways. And for those of you who saying, it's unprecedented for one president to attack his is another president like that. Trump tweets. Have you ever seen him tweet about Obama?
Yeah, well, that's obviously, yeah.
I mean, come on. Don't give me that crap.
I guess that counts as precedent as much as we'd like to deny that he's the
president has been set for 3.5 years. Shut up.
Yeah.
That's what I mean about the old farts not liking change.
And of course, I mean, the attacks it's never been quite like this, but,
or here's another one. Here's one of your favorites and my favorites too.
All right.
Daniel Dale.
Yes.
Right? Daniel Dale is watching the convention. And then after a while, he tweets out something to the, words to the effect. I'm not quoting him exactly. You're all watching me. I'm watching this. But you have to understand, it's just different. I can't do this fact-checking thing with the Democratic convention the way I do it with Trump. It's just an order of magnitude different. There's like nothing to talk about here.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure that there were probably Republicans saying, he's biased. Why doesn't he fact check when?
Well, Glenn Kessler had his usual fact checking. I'll find some picayune thing that has nothing to do with anything, just to show that I'm fair and balanced.
Trump's not very good.
Fact checking does not work in the age of Trump the way it used to with PolitiFact and Fact Checker and all that sort of stuff. Not how it works. They're going to lie in your face, and there's nothing that you can say or do that's going to change their mind. You can't shame them. And so, what are you doing? And so, we'll do the other side because they'll respond. Well, then you're being biased yourself.
Also, it's just those aren't the kinds of speeches that are going to contain. It's not going to be fact-based kind of speech from. Why would Barack Obama talk about the details, the statistics, and how many anythings have happened? He's not the president anymore. He's going to be talking purely about. People's
emotions. Michelle got the number of dead wrong. You see, I've run rings about you, and I proved it. Well, come on, it totally misses the point.
Well, but although that was an astounding moment that Trump fact checked her, and
he was the perfect example of why it doesn't work to do that. Anyway, there's that. But let's step back and look at the bigger picture here, because we always like to step back and look at the bigger picture, except when we're honing in and looking at the smaller picture. But we got 2 hours to fill, so we got to do one or the other. This is National Journal, Josh Krashour.
Okay.
And I'm going to give you a trio here, maybe 4 if we have time, or otherwise we'll do it after the break. But this one is Biden's convention message sounds a lot like Hillary's. The Democratic Party is again appealing to anti-Trump Republicans, but isn't doing much to woo the working class Obama-Trump voters who defected in 2016. Sort of has a point. You could say that's why Sherrod Brown and not John Kasich should have been the speaker. But within the article, he makes what I think is a bigger and more important point. Democrats are betting, with lots of polling to back them up, that the pandemic and resulting economic disruption will automatically move enough of these working class Obama-Trump voters back into their column. But again, it's not the Obama-Trump voters they're trying to get. It's the Obama I didn't vote voters. So that's why he gets that wrong. The president's abject incompetence is doing all the work for them. Biden, meanwhile, is an ideal avatar for those voters, even if they become disillusioned with the leftward direction of the Democratic Party. Don't forget, Krashour's a conservative.
Yeah.
Biden's now legendary selfie with a New York Times security guard in camaraderie with the Amtrak conductors were important vignettes highlighting his working class appeal. And that's true. Scranton Joe is going to be on tonight, and he is who he is, and it's not fake. It's genuine. So, it's why didn't you show that on nights 1 or 2? Because the same reason you didn't show night 3 on night 1. They're different nights doing different things in a big party, trying to do a Big Ten thing.
Oh.
Okay. On the other hand.
Well, I knew that, but
it's also reasonable to expect that the demographic realignment that Trump fueled in 2016 may be unexpectedly resilient. It's reasonable to anticipate Biden winning the presidency, but failing to bring in an outright Democratic Senate majority if rural states like Iowa and Montana end up reelecting the Republican senators. It's likely the sudden spike in violent crime, because Krashour is fixed on violent crime. Every time there's like a pussycat is up in a tree and somebody called the cops, he tweets it out. Look what's happening. Conservatives are just like obsessed with this for some reason.
Well, the Republicans.
I think it's because they think the black people are coming to get them, but I'm not going to say that out loud. It's likely that the sudden spike in violence, and that's not Josh, I'm just saying in general, they're fixated on it. And it turns out that the crime thing doesn't really work for them the way it does, because the Republican Party as a whole is only leading on crime by a slight amount, but it's the Willie Horton thing. It's likely that the sudden spike in violent crime in major cities could end up hampering some Democratic candidates in GOP-leaning districts where law and order message resonates, like Max Rose's seat in Staten Island, for instance. So let's watch Max Rose's seat in Staten Island and see what happens, because I think he'll do just fine. But broadly speaking, the convention has served as a reminder that antipathy toward Trump is the glue holding the Democratic Party together. And his much maligned handling of the pandemic is likely the straw that finally breaks his presidency. And that's true.
Yeah, I don't find too much fault with that.
But it's creating great confusion on what Biden will actually do in office if he gets there.
Oh.
Okay, fine. Well, that's true for everybody. Once the president wins, everybody's your friend and then tries to get his ear. So I'm okay with that. And that's an argument I'm happy to have after November, after he wins.
Predicting the future is tough.
Yeah, Couple that with article number 2, which is how Clinton's loss paved the way for Biden. And this is a theme from Seth Maskett, 538, that we've talked about on the show before. If you can't figure out what happened in 2016, you're going to get 2020 wrong.
Okay, I mean...
Right? Because you're going to try to correct what went wrong in 2016, but if you get that wrong, you're going to make the wrong corrections. And we were talking about that during the primary.
Maybe that doesn't fit that headline, but okay.
Surveys among Democratic voters and activists repeatedly showed that even when they didn't see Biden as their top candidate, they saw him as the most electable. And then he goes on in the article to talk about the fact that many of the professional Democrats, the people who run campaigns and such, have glommed on to the idea that there was too much identity politics in 2016, which is, I think, a backdoor way of saying, yeah, it really was about misogyny. But, we can't just say that outright. So let's just say identity politics. Because that's such a big term, it probably includes everything.
Okay, sure. I mean, that's
right. And overall, they prioritize electability to a far greater degree this year than they have in recent elections. And Biden was also, in some ways, a relatively easy choice for party insiders because he was broadly popular. He's basically generic Democrat. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, Biden represented a safe choice for the party that had tried something new in 2016 and, in the eyes of many, had been punished for it. That's Seth Maskett's view. Or as I said, old farts don't like change. It doesn't matter whether you're a pundit or a party person.
Okay. All right. That view has been expressed.
Yeah, that view has been expressed. But, is it true? It may be true with the party, professionals who get paid to do this. The electorate is something else altogether.
Yes.
Right? And when we get back, we're going to go over this morning consult piece, which is basically polling on how voters view the major parties' competence.
Competence?
Yeah, Republicans versus Democrats generically. This is generic Republican, generic Democrat, who does better on big issues, who does better on keeping the country safe, that kind of thing.
All right. Well, I imagine that would be, I hope, slaughter for the Republicans. At least their chief, anyway. We'll be right back. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We continue on with the stroll through the news and the roundup from the convention and the deep punditry. We're about halfway through the deep punditry, right, Greg?
Yeah, deep throat.
Okay.
Yep.
Sure. All right. Well, let's see. Yes. Now that we know how Clinton's loss paved the way for Biden, besides the fact that Biden wouldn't be the nominee if Clinton were the president.
Losing paves the way because if you win, then there's no thing to pave. But the bigger, broader picture I was saying to David in the little break there is that to make sense of that, look at the opposite. Okay, when you win, you're a genius and everything you did is right.
Cool.
That's why Karl Rove still has a spot on TV. But Trump figures, and Jared, who is the not so smart person who runs his campaign, figures it worked in 2016, so therefore we did everything right. So let's just do the same thing in 2020 as if nothing has changed. No pandemic. Hillary's still our opponent. We'll still run against her. And of course it'll work, because why wouldn't it work? And if that doesn't work, then, caravans.
I guess so. Right. Yeah. Do the old hits.
Do the old hits, whereas if you don't win, then you're going to do a little soul searching and figure, okay, well, how can we do this in a different way? And, it's going to be really disappointing to a lot of people who want change faster. But the Democrats certainly went with a little bit safer this time. And they didn't go with radical change, which is why when the Republicans run against the Democrats as radicals, it falls flat, and that was part of the plan. I don't know if you've taken a look at the Washington Post front page today.
No.
But if you go to the digital front page, without having to click through to any articles, you see the big banner headline, of course, Harris accepts historic VP nomination. We will speak truths. And, the fact that she identified Trump as a predator is just perfect.
Yeah.
And then Bill Riley chimes in and says, well, obviously, they don't care. They say they care about everybody, but they don't care about me. Well, that's because you're a predator, too.
Yeah, well, they care about you. I mean, in the
They care about you.
sense.
It's just not the way you want.
Yeah.
But the point is, if you look at the headline of the Washington Post, above it are a bunch of ads paid for by Trump.
I see it
really,
now.
or editorial decision by the Washington Post, by the way. But what the ad says, the radical leftist takeover of Joe Biden is complete. Too radical for us. That's their campaign thing. And it's blaring all over the front page of the Washington Post, these ads in the digital form, which I think is awful.
Places, I see.
But you get their theme.
What a theme.
Right? And what a theme it is. The radical leftist takeover. And we just went through the whole idea that Biden was the safest thing to do, and they're trying to push this radical stuff.
Yes.
And so, I'm just saying, I don't think it's going to work. But there's always going to be a segment of the population it does work with. So this Morning Consult poll, how voters view the major parties' competence, has hardly changed since 2016. Nearly 4 years after Trump's election, voters remain slightly more likely to deem Democrats capable of governing and tackling big issues. And it may be frustrating to you as a Democrat why the gap isn't bigger, but as they famously say in 2020, it is what it is. 48% of voters say the Democratic Party is capable of governing. 44% says is adept at handling the country's major issues, compared to 42 and 38. So they got a 5 or 6 point lead over the GOP, which is a lot where they lead in the swing states. Now, by double-digit margins, voters are more likely to say the parties have moved to the ideological extreme. So in other words, the voters think that the Democrats have a liberal party, even if liberals in the Democrats don't think the Democrats have a liberal party. And the voters think that the Republicans have a conservative party, and Republicans think they have a conservative party. And they're right, right in front of you is the difference between Democrats and Republicans.
Yes.
Oh, we don't think we're liberal enough. Well, we think we're totally conservative. Well, see, both sides. Well, no, exactly. It's not both sides.
Creaky chair today. All right. Yes, I was distracted.
But in a repeat from 2018, Democrats are more likely than Republicans to say they're worried and angry about the upcoming elections. This isn't the only poll that picked that up. Other polls have said if you're looking at who's angry, and angry makes you go vote, it's Democrats.
Yeah. And it's an interesting thing. They're not coming back the same way they usually do. It wavers back and forth, but when Democrats in the past, in more normal elections, have described themselves as angry, that's been a talking point against them. The angry left, radical as well. They've been saying we're the most radical ticket since forever, but I will say
ever since FDR,
the press reveled in identifying the conservatives as the angry voters last time, and that it was this fantastic thing somehow. The anger being displayed by Trump voters, that they were
fueled by economic
righteous
anxiety.
Indignation is how it was viewed, as opposed to hissy fits, which is how left-leaning anger is viewed. Really pretty remarkable from our so-called liberal media, but not new. You already
again, the poll findings can tackle the big issues facing the country. Democrats 44, Republicans 38. So Democrats have the lead on that in terms of the competence part. We'll keep the country safe. This is surprising. Democrats 44 and Republicans 42. In the George H.W. Bush era, it was a huge advantage for Republicans. That's gone. And it has been since 2016. So that's pretty interesting. That really hasn't changed. Is capable of governing. The Democrats had a 4-point lead in 2016 and a 6-point lead in 2020. So that hasn't changed. What has changed is cares about middle-class Americans. The Democrats continue their lead. Cares about people like me. The Democrats continue their lead. Cares about wealthy Americans. Republicans 78, Democrats 38, the parties, that is. Yes. Voters think that the Republican Party cares about wealthy Americans, and the Democrats not so much.
Yeah, well, I care about them.
They care about people like you, but they don't care about wealthy Americans. Right. Oh, well, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
Tax them.
We care about them in that
sense. Tax the rich.
Certainly, and we don't want to necessarily put every one of them in a blender, but, right. But yeah, that's an interesting way of putting it.
How voters in key swing groups evaluate the parties? Voters were asked whether the Democratic Party or the GOP cares more about people like you. All voters, Democratic Party 43, Republican Party 32. It's a pretty big gap there. In suburban voters, 44-31. And with the undecided, 18-14. So Democrats clearly care more. They're more empathic, empathetic. There's no question about it. Right? Is more capable of governing, it's much more of a tie. Yeah. All voters, Democrats 41, Republican Party is given 36. These aren't Democrats saying it. What do all voters look at the parties like? So Democratic Party 41 and Republican Party 36. So there's a slight lead for capable of governing. As schools start to open and then close and sports doesn't happen, I would guess that gap is going to widen a little bit, but don't expect it to widen tremendously. And with suburban voters, 42-36 in favor of Democrats. And with undecided, it's actually Republicans, Democrats 11, Republicans 19. So undecided voters still think Republicans are more capable of governing.
I see. Okay. Well, maybe that's why they're having difficulty deciding.
That's why they're having difficulty deciding.
I don't know anything.
If I already decided, and that doesn't mean it's a large group, but if I already decided that you screwed up, you're not talking about me.
Yes.
You're talking about people who, which party's which, what's going on. Is more capable of tackling the big issues facing the country. All voters, Democratic Party 40%, and Republican Party 36%. Again, closer than you would think. In the suburbs, 41-36. So Democrats have an edge. It's usually a 5 or 6 point edge. It's not a 14-point edge. But they do have double-digit advantages when it comes to caring about people like you. And in a case where, as is today, again, the unemployment numbers are over 1 million for applying for unemployment that may or may not exist at this point based on what the Republicans are doing. Caring about people like you really matters. So, that's the background for all of this.
I love people like
and, the Republicans remain confident because they remain confident in their base. The Democrats are never confident because they're Democrats, but they feel like they're making a play not only for their base, but for independents and for people who didn't vote in 2016 because they figured there was no difference between the parties. Well, there's a big difference in terms of caring about people like you, and now is the time where it's important to care about people like you because things are not good. So we'll see how that plays out over time. Okay. And that leads us to Ron Brownstein's article. The Democratic Convention is a reality check for Trump. Blue America is only growing. Despite a pandemic that's killed more than 170,000 Americans and cratered the economy.
Yes.
The latest surveys show Trump maintaining strong support among white voters most uneasy about demographic and cultural changes remaking America. Okay. Again, the narrator. That's why they picked Biden. Particularly those who are evangelical Christians, live in rural areas, or lack a college degree. And despite a Democratic nominee who stirs only modest enthusiasm among many key party constituencies, those same polls show Biden amassing big advantages among the groups most comfortable with those changes: young people, racial minorities, secular Americans, and college-educated white Americans. The division of the electorate leaves Biden holding a steady and substantial lead in national polling over Trump that matches or slightly exceeds a Democrat's 8 percentage point edge in the total national vote for the House of Representatives in 2018. But the uneven distribution of these contrasting constituencies across the battleground states means Democrats will likely remain nervous through Election Day about their ability to win the Electoral College, even if Biden maintains a healthy lead in the popular vote, which, by the way, it shouldn't. If your lead is more than 4 or 5 points, that's going to be enough. If it's less than that, you better worry about the Electoral College.
Okay.
So last night's proceedings, Ron Brownstein says,
Yes.
were effectively a tribute to America's growing diversity.
Yes,
But
also.
Tuesday wasn't and Monday wasn't.
True, but it was a diversity of message.
Yes, exactly. And then if you have a diversity of message, it's, well, they don't have a single theme.
That's right.
Well, that's because they have diversity.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I get that. Why doesn't he get that? Does he later in the article?
He does. Well, he's not the one having an issue with this. It's some of the conservative commentators who didn't like what they were seeing, but didn't specifically say, well, this didn't work for me. That was terrible. This is awful. Oh, my gosh. After seeing Kamala Harris, all of a sudden, said Eric Erickson, I actually realistically see Donald Trump being reelected for the first time.
Okay.
He said that.
Well, yeah.
What is it about Kamala Harris that made you think that?
Calamari.
Exactly.
Yeah. What do we think it might be? It is odd, isn't it?
Could be misogyny, could be racism. Hard to tell. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt and say, why not both?
Yes.
Right. The brilliantly reimagined convention roll call reinforced the point with brief testimonials, some somber, others goofy, from another diverse roster of speakers in every state and territory, a change that drew rave reviews on Twitter and TV news. Some Democratic activists complained that organizers had allocated too much of the event's limited time to Republicans and too little to non-white progressive leaders such as Stacey Abrams and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but average viewers probably absorbed a very different image. On a day when Trump delivered an incendiary speech in Yuma, Arizona, touting his border wall and reprising the language from 2015 about immigrants as murderers and rapists, Democrats offered the 21st century version of a Norman Rockwell painting.
Yes.
Right? And that contrast testifies to the depth and the intractability of the modern American divide. Even as Democrats gather to nominate Scranton Joe, whose supporters have long touted his ability to recapture working-class white voters, many indications suggest 2020 could cleave the electorate more deeply than ever before, with a diverse, more and more educated, culturally cosmopolitan, metropolitan-based coalition of transformation. That's Ron Brownstein's thing. On the Democratic side, and a preponderantly white, heavily blue-collar, Christian, non-urban coalition of restoration on the Republican side. He's used those terms for years. The stark reality of that separation would test the bridge-building capacity of any president. And that's true. So that's where we stand. And it's really a question of who you're trying to appeal to. And that's why it's so important to get the 2016 people off the sidelines. You can't convince Trump voters, really solid Trump voters, to not vote for Trump. It's not going to happen. I think it's because they're too racist, but whatever the reason, it's not going to happen. So what you have to do is you have to mobilize those independents. Again, a different constituency than 2016, because when you look at independent, that's always a changing electorate. The independents of 2020 won't be the independents of 2016, and you've got to get them off the sidelines. And that's why, again, going back to what I originally said, I think both the campaign and the entire Democratic convention were aimed at mobilizing those people who didn't vote in 2016, whereas the Republican convention is more likely going to be trying to energize the base they already have, but not go after new people.
Okay. Well, I have a new basis on which they might try and convince people who voted for Donald Trump last time to break away from him. The breaking news, it's happening, QAnon friends. The indictments are coming down, except they're coming down against Steve Bannon, who apparently has had his indictment by the Southern District of New York announced just in the last few minutes.
And what is he being indicted for?
Indicted in a fraud scheme, not his role necessarily directly in the Trump campaign or its collusion with Russia, but instead indicted over one of his outside but Trump-adjacent projects, the We Build the Wall Fund, a sort of a GoFundMe-type crowdfunding effort that raised money to privately construct a section of U.S.-Mexico border wall, except it wasn't on the U.S.-Mexico border or connected to any other wall.
Yes. So Trump can't get the money from
the
federal government, so we'll just raise the money privately.
Yes. And
Through
as
small
it turns
donations,
out,
give
they
to me.
stole it. Or at least that's the accusation. There's no fraud involved in that effort, to no one's surprise, really. But that has led to a fraud indictment for Steve Bannon, who, had just been trying to strong-arm his way back into the news recently, too. So now he's there firmly, and we'll find out.
Well,
how
now
that
I know why
plays.
he didn't look well.
Yes, right. Well, because he's Steve Bannon, and he's a hard liver. That is to say, I believe his liver may be harder than it's supposed to be.
Or as Robert George from the New York Daily News says, never a dull moment.
Yeah, right, pretty much. So that throws some fun into the morning. Everyone's going to enjoy that one.
So our friend Armando notes, if they indicted Bannon, they must have extremely strong evidence against him. And that would especially be true if it went through the Bill Barr Justice Department and it happened this close to an election.
Yeah, that's true. Somebody must have had something to say about that. I suppose they could have kept it more or less under the radar, or it's entirely possible that, Trump, I don't care about that guy anymore. Go ahead.
Now, remember, just a few days ago, we learned that Trump's original campaign manager, Paul Manafort,
Yes.
was colluding with the Russians.
Yes, he was. We learned that.
And that his
4 years
partner
ago.
is a longtime Russian spy.
Yes. I feel like we learned that 4 years ago, too. But now everyone says it.
But then, so when that didn't work out, they replaced Paul Manafort with Steve Bannon, who was just indicted for fraud.
Yes. Let's see. It was Corey Lewandowski was in the mix before him. I don't think he's been indicted on anything lately.
All that stuff. So, it's pretty amazing, actually, when you go back and think about it.
Yeah.
So as my conservative Republican friend Evan Siegfried tweets, Steve Bannon indicted, Trump is finally draining the swamp. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's big news, but it only reinforces what we're talking about here and reinforces Joe Biden's potential appeal, at least. Now, the thing about Steve Bannon's indictment is that, and for all I know, Trump will pardon him tomorrow. I don't know. But the thing is that everybody in Trump world knows who he is.
Yeah.
Everybody in Breitbart world knows who he is. Sure. Everybody in MAGA world knows who he is.
Yes.
So that's going to certainly have reverberations of some sort. So, yeah, really interesting news.
Yeah, well, it could have happened to a nicer guy if they really tried, but it was fun to watch them do this one. Yeah, we'll see where this one goes. I imagine Trump world could just as easily absorb this, though, as, well, of course, the deep state is coming for him. Okay, whatever.
Yeah. Well, Bill Barr's Justice Department just indicted him. So,
yeah.
Is that what you mean by deep state? Is that what you mean by swamp?
Yeah. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know.
Make it up as you go along. What the hell? QAnon has a lot of flexibility to it.
So that, yet another big story, because there's a big story every day.
Sure.
But hey, if you want to distract from the Democratic National Convention, what better way than indicting Steve Bannon?
Yeah, it is a good plan.
Probably Jared's idea.
Yeah, I wonder whether like Steve Bannon just sent them, like an overdue notice for billing for the 2016 campaign or something, and they said, "Don't pay that, arrest them."
Said, F this, go arrest them. Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So the post office, as you predicted and as many predicted, despite the superficial win, Nancy Pelosi said yesterday that she spoke with DeJoy, the postmaster general, who refused to put the sorting machines back.
Yes,
it's interesting.
Still taking them out.
The Upshot had this really interesting piece here. And, part of the weird conservative reaction to you're all making this up, I think, stems from a much more simple, look at things. When you talk about the post office, are you talking to the managers or are you talking to the workers?
Me?
Because you get a different picture.
Yeah, true.
Right? If you talk to the managers, well, the post office is inefficient and we can handle this. Can the post office handle election mail while the recession could actually help? Because of the recession, there isn't as much marketing mail, so capacity is much greater than it normally is, and the post office ought to be able to handle this, and they have the ability to do all of this holiday mail, although they do that by hiring people and going on overtime.
Yeah, yes.
But they can do this. And that may, in fact, on paper be true. But it presupposes a level of trust and goodwill and good faith in trying to get this done that, of course, doesn't exist because you have Gordon Sondland running the post office, or Gordon Sondland equivalent.
Yes.
You have DeJoy running the post office, who is a Trump lackey, who is totally interested in privatizing the place and totally interested in Trump's program of delaying and confusing things. And so with a lack of good faith, it may be that the post office could have handled all of this, especially with marketing mail plummeting 36%, allowing that capacity, but won't be allowed to do this because they won't be given overtime because those sorters will be dismantled and for no reason. And it's got nothing to do with efficiency, because if you take away the capacity to be able to handle the mail, then the mail doesn't get handled. And nobody has explained how getting rid of sorting machines is good for efficiency.
No, they haven't. And some interesting news yesterday. Not only some skepticism about DeJoy's promises being expressed even by Nancy Pelosi, but apparently right in the middle of the whole thing, after having promised to halt all of these removals, reports began coming in from around the country of, no, I'm a reporter for a local television station and I'm watching removals happening now.
Right, so he lied.
Yeah.
And the hearing, the first one's going to be on Friday.
Yeah.
And the second one's going to be on Monday, and there's going to be a vote in between on Saturday. So obviously it's not over, but then again, the Democrats aren't letting up on that either. And when you don't get your mail, you feel it, just like it's stupid to have some management type explain to a guy who just lost his job why this isn't really a recession.
Yes.
Put up all the damn charts you want. If I just lost my job, I know what this is. If you're out there and you're not getting your medicines in the mail, I know what this is.
Right.
And, it's going to be a really interesting approach watching them try to dance around that.
Yes.
And then, of course, there's QAnon. And there's, Trump endorsing QAnon. And by the way, QAnon just been kicked off a whole bunch of Facebook secret groups. And by the way, there's also Trump saying that, if I lose the election, well, I'll think about whether or not I leave. And Kayleigh McEnany, confirming that it's up to him and he'll decide later.
He's the decider.
Silly stuff, but real stuff. And that's part of why Obama was saying, I don't understand why you don't see this.
Yeah.
Right. And so the last point that I would make is another theme that the conservatives have come up with, which is actually interesting in its own right, is that the trouble with Obama is that he keeps thinking that this is all evident.
Yes.
And half the country doesn't. Right. Which was part of Josh Krausauer's article from the National Journal, that, he's angry. He's furious. He sees what he sees. It's crystal clear to him. It's crystal clear to Democrats, but it's only crystal clear to half the country. And the other half of the country doesn't think it's so crystal clear and isn't all, worked up about the fact that Trump's trying to steal the election. So it makes it very difficult to convey outrage when everybody isn't outraged. The post office is another story. People are outraged about that.
Yes. So that one will work well.
So if you're going to talk about 52%. Stealing, what's wrong with the post office? It happens that they're trying to steal the election using the post office. But what I'm telling you is they're screwing up your mail. Get mad about that.
That works simple enough. And the moment anybody notices something very late or missing, they'll say, aha, I've been hearing about this.
Yeah,
which you can thank your congressional Democrats for doing last weekend.
Anyway, that's my sequence and segment and observations for today. Again, thanks to Denise Velez for being on yesterday.
Yes.
And giving us some clues as to what to watch for. Right. And tonight, I think, will be another good visual. And, of course, all eyes will be on Scranton Joe And we'll see how that goes. And then you'll talk about it tomorrow, and I'll be back on Monday, and we shall do it again.
It'll all happen all over again. It does feel like
Groundhog Day.
Yeah, sometimes. All right.
Yeah, we'll have Bill
Jinx.
Murray on to talk about what happened.
Yes, sure. Why not? He'd probably do it too if we actually knew about the show and we gave him the Skype number. He's that kind of guy.
Yeah, you never know.
All
righty, take
Very
care,
good.
and I
Thank
will
you.
talk to you on Monday.
Okay, that sounds like a good plan. Have a good weekend. We'll be chatting in the meantime, I'm sure. More news from out of the courts, by the way. A judge has just thrown out Trump's challenge to the Manhattan DA's subpoena for his tax records. So his first line challenge to that, I mean, he'll then appeal that and appeal that and appeal that.
Well, he's going to lose that. It won't be till after the election, but Cy Vance is getting those tax returns.
Yeah, right. So I just keep that in mind, by the way. How long does it take to get tax records out of a president reluctant to turn them over? With enough fraud, 4 years. So, if you're only aiming at 4 years, you might get away with it.
Right. So depressing times, but help is on the way. Take care, and I'll talk to you on Monday.
Very good. All right. See you then. And it does feel like depressing times. This particular page I'm looking at on CNBC, somehow illustrated by a sad-looking dog. I don't really know. They don't have the story up yet. They don't have the insider story of it. Just the fact that the judge throws out challenge to Manhattan DA's subpoena. So, okay, once we can add that eventually to the you're really good at getting stuff done or whatever dotard thread, although it's just not that exciting a bit of news. An expected loss, but good that they turned it around pretty quickly, because I think Trump was just basically depending on, and like we said, with not enough days left before the election, in effect, he wins. But, we've been expecting for a long time that it would just be delay, baseless delays on that. And sure enough, very quickly, the judge agrees, yeah, that was pretty baseless and stupid, and I'm not going to let it occupy a great deal of my time. But, you'll succeed in delaying things until the after election. Okay, that's sad. We'll see if we can't check up and get any new information about Steve Bannon in the 1 minute break. But plenty of other directions to go into. Maybe we can just wait and let that story develop and discuss it a little bit tomorrow. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's see. I do have this piece of information, a good observation made regarding the indictment against Steve Bannon, who's making the call here. Staff writer at The Atlantic, Edward Isaac Dovere, who points out the following. Chris Kobach, whom we know and hate from Kansas, the conspiracy theorist who's dedicated his life to proving the massive voter fraud that Donald Trump hopes to make central to his claims to hold on to power after a massive loss at the polls in November. Chris Kobach is the general counsel of the Build the Wall PAC that Steve Bannon was just, it says arrested, but we know indicted. I don't know whether they actually went and arrested him or not. That'd be even more exciting. Indicted, anyway, for being involved in as chairman. So it's going to pull a lot of people in with him. That's the important point. There was an effective grift going on, and so all the big names were going to make their way over there and try to get a bite at the apple, and now they'll all, I guess, be called to account in some form or another, and we'll see whether maybe somebody will turn against the rest of them and in exchange for a deal, or maybe they'll all go down this way, or maybe none of them will because a lot of them are rich and white. But Chris Kobach, general counsel for the Build the Wall PAC that Steve Bannon just got indicted for chairing. The advisory board includes Eric Prince. Of course, you'll recognize that name as the CEO of the firm formerly known as Blackwater, and who had all sorts of illicit dealings, according to the Mueller report and the Senate Intelligence Committee, prior to the election and then in between, meeting with Russian intelligence officials in the Seychelles, right? And, of course, the brother of Education Secretary, nominally speaking, Betsy DeVos. So who else is on the advisory board besides Eric Prince? And why wouldn't he be on the Build the Wall PAC thing? Again, there was grift. He heard he could get a piece of, so he took a bite at it. Who else? Former Colorado Congressman Tom Tancredo. Remember that guy? He too on the board. Also Sheriff Dave Clark, former Sheriff Dave Clark. You remember that guy with he was the sheriff who looked like he had a second job at TGI Fridays. You remember the vest covered in pieces of flair, right? And also former Major League Baseball pitcher and now full-time conspiracy theorist a-hole Curt Schilling. What a stellar board. And I guess that's one of the things about it is you find as a grifter, the living is easy once you get to be famous. People will just put you automatically on the boards of other grifts. But if one of them goes down, they start to pull you all in, and the interlocking directorates of grift begin to fall apart. So I love it. You hate to see it. No, you love to see it, as people have now begun saying more regularly than Trump saying you hate to see it. And, wow, that'll be fun to follow up on that story. Not much in the way of details yet, although I guess we could do what Edward here did and do some background research on the Build the Wall group, but I'll leave that for others. We can look at their already completed research in the form of their articles that I have stuffed into my pockets for later reading. Let's see. What have we to share with you? Oh, here's a little bit of coronavirus news. Oh, yeah. Look, The Hill. We'll grab this version of The Hill Bannon story. The Hill's headline reads the much more exciting news that Bannon and three others, we should find out who they are, maybe they're the ones that just named, charged with defrauding donors of We Build the Wall campaign. But more exciting than that was the tweet that accompanied it. And I noticed that the line that's in the tweet does not appear in the headline, so I'll have to read the story. The tweet reads, just in, Bannon arrested, charged with fraud over We Build the Wall campaign. So now I really feel like we have to at least skim quickly through the Hill story and see whether they stand by that in the body of their article or whether that was just a mistake or clickbait. I'll skip through the boring intro here. Yeah, former White House. Well, no, that's the regular stuff. Okay, the boring stuff is that he's a former White House chief strategist, etc. He and three others arrested, so it says, and charged with defrauding hundreds of thousands of dollars, or hundreds of thousands of donors, probably out of those dollars, who contributed to a fundraising campaign for a private border wall. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York said Thursday. Bannon, Brian Kolfage, I don't think I know the guy, Andrew Badolato, name sounds familiar, but it might just be that he sounds like a guy who might have gone to high school with me or something, and Timothy Shea. I have to look these guys up, but I bet we have heard some of those names before. Anyway, they allegedly defrauded donors of the online crowdfunding campaign known as We Build the Wall. Was Brian Kolfage might have been nominally the head of that, or the originator of that, and he's just a constant GoFundMe type grifter. I think we've read about him in the past. And Greg is providing some background research on this too. All right, let's check into it. They have allegedly defrauded donors of the online crowdfunding campaign known as We Build the Wall, which raised more than $25 million, the office said. The four defendants are expected to appear in court Thursday afternoon. I guess so. I mean, that's what you do with people once you arrest them, right? As alleged, the defendants defrauded hundreds of thousands of donors, capitalizing on their interest in funding a border wall to raise millions of dollars under the false pretense that all of the money would be spent on construction. I mean, if that wasn't an obvious lie right from the outset, I don't know what was. But it's the sort of thing that people want to believe. So good claim if you're a grifter. This according to acting U.S. Attorney Audrey Strauss. Remember, of course, that the players in the Southern District of New York's U.S. Attorney's Office were shuffled around quite a bit, giving some people some nominal promotions, so that they would move out of the way. And I thought the plan was not indict Trump associates, but I guess the new ones. And you'll recall also that there was a battle over who would succeed the departing, and even the departing person may have been acting U.S. attorney. I can't really recall off the top of my head, but there was a big fight over who that would be, and it was considered to have been won by the departing U.S. attorney, replacing them not with a Bill Barr lackey, but with somebody who they trusted to do the right thing more often than not. And I guess they've done it, at least in the Bannon context. All right, so let's see. There's not that much more. They're facing charges including one count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud and one count of conspiracy to commit money laundering, a very popular Trump-adjacent crime. Each charge carries a maximum prison sentence of 20 years, so I think that they should get that. And also, by the way, Steve Bannon, you should wear a maximum number of shirts of 20 as well. That's just prison etiquette, I think. So I don't want you to get yourself in trouble when you report to the big house. We'll see. I'll have to count down to when that's going to happen. Let's see. Let me flip over to what Greg had sent in Skype. It promised to be somewhat interesting in terms of, I guess he must have raked up a few extra points. Yeah, here we go. The tweet from another source here, Brandy Zadrozny, reporter for NBC News, Kolfage, Bannon, Battleotto, and Shea. Okay, the same names. They received all this money, and I don't know. I guess it doesn't say what they did with it, but just confirming the story we got from The Hill on that one. And let's see, what else? Was there more? Any other developments that... okay, she's just quoting from her tweet here. How did Kolfage allegedly spend those Build the Wall funds? On a boat. That is to say, he bought the boat, not that he boarded a boat and then spent the money thereafter, say, by ordering other things on the internet. On a boat and plastic surgery, according to the feds. That will be interesting. I would love to find out who, or rather, just for curiosity's sake, exactly what was that plastic surgery. I want to know what was so valuable to him. More people breaking all the details here. This is terrific. Wait a minute. I scrolled past it too fast. Somebody had some details on what Kolfage was up to. Let's see. No, that wasn't it. Dang. That went too far, too fast. Okay. Oh, there we are. Natasha Bertrand. I was just going to try searching around. Kolfage covertly, not covertly enough though, took for his personal use more than $350,000 in these funds that donors had given to We Build the Wall, while Bannon received over $1 million from We Build the Wall, at least some of which Bannon used to cover hundreds of thousands of dollars in personal expenses. Well, once you've stolen it, I figured that's what you were going to do with it. I don't know where that information is coming from, but I guess it's coming out of the indictments. People thumbing through them now. All right. Well, very interesting. We'll keep an eye on that one. We'll probably have some more information. And maybe it'll even be juicy, salacious stuff by tomorrow, I guess. Oh, look at this. Armando, though, with this additional observation. The company that built the wall for Build the Wall was Fisher Industries. And they received a $1.3 billion contract from the federal government, I guess, to do other parts of the wall. So that's interesting and worth watching as well. All right, I'll put that aside and mark it up for inclusion in today's roundup. And now we can, I think we'll keep one eye on the Twitter scroll and see if anything else you need to keep up with. Oh, well, good observation from our, can only hold things on the screen for so long, but from our good friend Jesse LaGreca, a good observation. How effing dumb did you have to be to vote for the Mexico will pay to build the wall guy and then send your own money to build the wall? You just had to be very excited and pro-wall is the real answer, but the funnier answer is that one. a lot of effing dumb. That's how dumb you would have to be. All right, maybe if I keep my eye on the Twitter scroll, I might not get to anything else at this point. But that was just fun and exciting. I love to see the downfall of Steve Bannon. If we can finally get around to it, will be fun and exciting. Okay, let's see. Oh, here's a interesting. I guess I have put away here a tweet from Brian Colfage himself. We Build the Wall has officially deleted the largest GoFundMe campaign ever from the GoFundMe platform. We will not give them another penny after raising $27 million. We're taking our business to Fundraiser. I didn't even know there was I figured there must be an alternative somewhere, where censorship doesn't happen. Something. I guess they believe that they were somehow unfairly treated by GoFundMe, which is pretty amazing. Pretty soon, of course, they'll turn their attention to claiming they've been unfairly treated by the Southern District of New York's U.S. Attorney's Office. Okay. Wonder what he's specifically complaining about. There's a link to a dumb news source here. GoFundMe censors Colfage campaign. His latest GoFundMe scam. A campaign to help riot victims sue Black Lives Matter. How they're going to do that and who they'll name in the suit, I have no idea. But, you get the picture. I don't think I have to tell you too much more about that to understand what that's all about. All right. Mark that one for inclusion, too, because it's ridiculous and, you might not believe it unless you get to see it for yourself. Okay. Other things to discuss. I mentioned that there was some some coronavirus news. Just to kind of keep you up to date on something you've probably been waiting to hear more about. I happened to see The Hill tweeting about this one because they tweet about everything about every 8 minutes. Officials warn Sturgis bar patron, you'll never guess what might have happened. He may have transmitted coronavirus to others. Yeah, all right. Thanks to Justine Coleman for writing this up for The Hill. South Dakota health officials warned that a bar patron may have transmitted coronavirus to other customers during the Sturgis motorcycle rally, which I'm okay with, honestly. We just have to keep the rest of them in isolation now. That won't happen, and we'll really find ourselves in trouble shortly, but okay. South Dakota health officials warned about this. South Dakota Health Department said in a notice published Tuesday that a customer at the One-Eyed Jack's Saloon in Sturgis, South Dakota on August 11th has tested positive for coronavirus. Health officials instructed people at the bar between noon and 5:30 p.m. to get a life, but also that they need to monitor for symptoms for 14 days after the possible transmission date. The infected customer's visit fell during the 10-day motorcycle rally that attracted more than 460,000 vehicles, or like I say, as the cops in those parts sometimes say, vehicles. That according to the Associated Press, estimated crowd size was almost 8% less than last year. Some of those bikers are getting pretty elderly. They may have stayed home. Most people at the rally did not take coronavirus precautions like wearing masks and social distancing, the AP noted. Some public health experts said they're concerned that the rally could become a super spreader event. That seems pretty obvious. I don't think we need to read through the rest of the article. Just wanted to let you know that we've got our first warning anyway to the Sturgis attendees that, yep, you've been exposed. Now we'll see how they deal with it. My bet is poorly. But you never know. They may surprise us. Other quick coronavirus news hits. I don't know if we really hit any specific milestones yesterday, although we're up above 175,000 deaths in the United States. News from the Miami-Dade County area down in Florida, where, everyone's on fire with COVID-19. Nearly 600 Miami-Dade County Public Schools employees have tested positive for COVID-19. Now, I don't know what the status of their schools is in terms of whether they're open or not. And this is actually a roundup of how many of their employees have tested positive throughout the pandemic. So from March through July, many of them doubtless will have recovered by now. But just basically, I guess this must mean that they're not open yet. or at least that if they are open, they haven't yet had to shut a large number of schools back down again because of the coronavirus. But potentially that's what they're facing, and this might just be a good early warning to the school board folks down there. All right, well, we got to check in on how are those people doing, how many of them are still active with the virus, and does that endanger our plans to reopen the schools? Yes. Oh, okay. Another big story that I did happen to see this morning and really didn't get, I didn't think we were going to get around to doing this, but Greg has sent us a reminder. Good idea to bring us up to date on it. NBC News tweet noting that Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny is in a coma as doctors fight for his life after he was, you'll never guess, poisoned Thursday morning, his spokesperson says. So, terrible news there. Navalny has been really an interesting source for some interesting information about happenings in Russia that affect happenings here in the United States because of President Trump's plan for overt political union between Russia and the United States. He's, of course, as Greg notes, their most prominent opposition leader. We've read his work here on the show. I mean, his opposition is not just in the form of waging political campaign to win the presidency of Russia, but also research and publication of what he tells us is his revealing insight into the criminal syndicate that runs Russia, that we've suspected was there all along. And I'm sure there's plenty of motivations behind it, but of course just as many motivations for the mobsters that he's exposing to poison and kill him, and I guess they've very nearly got the job done. So, want to note that one and hope that he pulls through. He's been pretty incredible in providing insight into what's happening there in ways that are very important to our unraveling what's happening here. So, what do we say? Thoughts and prayers. I mean, the hackneyed thing. It's not a shooting, it's a poisoning. That's the way they do it there. I'm surprised it didn't go through a window, quite honestly. Let's see. Yes, okay, we got that information about the people involved in GoFundMe's Build the Wall. Oh, Ballerina X says that the website is still up at webuildthewall.us. And that the team members are all still listed there. So, okay. I imagine that they aren't able to take the website down because they're under arrest. Here's an even more interesting detail about the arrest. Let's see. Who's tweeted this one around? Brandon Friedman brings it to my attention with you'll laugh too when you find out that Margaret Brennan is reporting for, all right, let's scroll over and find out. Face the Nation moderator and CBS News foreign affairs correspondent Margaret Brennan reporting that CBS News' Pat Milton finds that Steve Bannon was taken into custody. Remember what the crime here is. It's wire fraud, right, and money laundering, GoFundMe, everybody sending checks, I guess, to these guys. So guess what happens? Taken into custody today by who? Who made the arrest? The Southern District of New York handed down the indictment. Who made the arrest? New York City cops? No. U.S. Postal Service agents have made the arrest because mail fraud, wire fraud. He's expected to be arraigned today before a U.S. magistrate. Let's see. And then, of course, what the allegation was all about. But yeah, how would you like that? To be arrested, taken into custody by Postal Service agents. That's pretty perfect. So, well done there. Don't defund the post office. Okay, let's see. What other things do we want to touch on at this point? All right, time probably to move on to some of the other stories I've been discussing and tucked away for consideration. I mentioned, speaking of the post office, when we were talking to Greg, the reports from around the country that sorting machines were still being dismantled. I don't know about whether or not any post off or mailboxes were being removed yesterday. And it's entirely possible that DeJoy will try to explain some of this stuff away by saying, well, we had begun the dismantling of some of these mail sorting machines before you forced me to promise that we were going to stop doing that, and we just needed to complete the process. Sort of like the way the Trump organization promised that they wouldn't be doing any more foreign deals once Donald Trump was president, but they continued to do foreign deals, and at first the excuse was, well, these things were already in the works, we just need to conclude them. And then they just started initiating brand new deals and saying, what? I never said we weren't going to do that. Same thing for DeJoy, although, I guess Greg was a little more optimistic about what they might really mean, if not their actual word, but what they might really mean in what they were going to do, perhaps slowing things down until after the election or whatever. And, of course, everybody else pointing out that there was no indication that DeJoy had any interest in replacing any of the equipment or mailboxes. That wasn't happening. And Pelosi picked up on that pretty quickly. But even worse, right in the middle of all this, as he's promising that he's not going to do this anymore, he's caught at in particular, where was it? Is it Grand Rapids, Michigan post office, where WOOD TV reporters found the machines dismantled and being placed out in the parking lot. So, not good, basically. All right, let's see. Other interesting developments. Wow, there's a couple of them. Let me throw out... You could spend, again, all day reading about QAnon, but I wanted to throw out a weird problem that occurred to me, and I'm not certain I got a chance to discuss it in the last couple of days, but if not, I would like to put this out there. With, what's her name? Marjorie Greene, right, in the Georgia House district, now the nominee for the Republicans in a very red district, and I guess for all intents and purposes, basically due to show up as an elected member of Congress in January, I have real concerns, not only about, the state of the nation and the fact that QAnon can thrive here to the extent that we're electing true believer QAnon nuts to Congress, but the danger, I'm very worried actually about the danger of seating someone like this. It rises to the level where I think Democrats actually have to explore the possibility of rejecting her credentials or of refusing to seat her when she arrives in Washington in January. And I know that's a very touchy subject and not one that Democrats are going to be super enthusiastic about addressing seriously. But long story short, I just remind everybody, members of Congress, when they're genuine and elected, they all, of course, you've seen them on TV. They're wearing those lapel pins. They have a very real purpose around the Capitol and the Capitol campus, if you will, identifying them as members, but entitling them not only to floor access, which would ordinarily otherwise be guarded by Capitol Police, but they can, because of the nature of their business and the trusted status, quite frankly, that comes with being a member of Congress, even if some of them don't deserve it, it's never really risen to the level where individual members of Congress posed such a great threat. There are close calls. I mean, you never know what Louis Gohmert is going to do, and of course, he might spread coronavirus around, knowingly or otherwise, and that's a danger. And occasional, really extreme cases, like way back when Steve Stockman, who was suspected of having real connections to the very weird anti-government militia movement. But here, you're going to have somebody who's elected, overtly on the QAnon platform, getting one of these pins that entitles them to bypass Capitol Hill security because they're a member of Congress. And by the way, occasionally this happens too, bring with them people that they are willing to claim, if they're down there personally, are their guests, and quite literally can bring them onto the House floor. that seems fairly obvious, but you can bypass security. You go around the metal detectors that the rest of the world has to go through when they visit a building in the Capitol complex. And you now have somebody who's a true believer in a movement that has, at its very worst, brought a AR-15 wielding QAnon nut to the Comet ping pong and pizza place in Washington, D.C., insisting on freeing the child sex slaves who he believed were being held in the basement there, even though they don't have a basement. And that's dangerous. We had a guy show up at the Hoover Dam, right? And I don't remember what he was claiming to do. Bomb it, shoot the place up. But he, too, was motivated by weird QAnon beliefs. Now we're going to give one of those people a pin that entitles them to walk onto the floor of the House of Congress around the metal detectors. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday. But our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning show here on Netroots Radio. We left you at a very exciting portion of a crescendo towards warning people about a very serious danger. I don't know what kind of person Marjorie Greene is beyond her belief in QAnon theories and other strange bigotries and conspiracy theories, but circulating on the web the other day was a video she made of herself, attempting to, I wouldn't say force her way in. I don't think she broke any laws doing this, but visiting the offices, for instance, of Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, right? And I think we may have made mention of this, although, I don't know, it's a little hazy where I might have been talking about this, but visiting their offices, claiming that their oaths of office as members of Congress were invalid because they, as she claimed, took the oath on a Quran rather than a Christian Bible. And that this somehow invalidated their oath, which it would not. But also, just in point of fact, we can point out that the oath of office is actually administered en masse by the Speaker to the entirety of the House at the same time, and that their hands are on nothing, though some of them surely probably bring Bibles with them. People to whom this is extremely important might do that. But in the House chamber, during the actual swearing in, it's just them raising their right hands, and their left hands they could be on whatever they want. And I wouldn't put it past Republican members. Some of them, of course, will bring Bibles, and some of them will put their hands on other people or on themselves in some way, and not necessarily indicative of what they're swearing their allegiance to. It's just that's one of their habits. But no, swearing in the House doesn't involve a Bible or anything else. Where the Bibles sometimes come into play is in the, some would say fake, others euphemistically say ceremonial swearing in, ceremonies, events, what have you, in which pictures are taken, and each member gets a chance to stand with the Speaker of the House and stage a photo as if they were being sworn in using the Bible. Their family gets to join them for the picture, or perhaps hold the family Bible, or whatever it is you choose to be sworn in on. The Senate does the same ones, so there's a ceremonial thing, and I don't know, I guess it shouldn't have any legal bearing whatsoever what book you choose to swear in on. And you may recall that Kristen Sinema Do I have it right? Is it Kirsten Sinema or Kristen Sinema? I never do get that correct. But anyway, that she, for her ceremonial swearing in, it's Kirsten, yeah, Kyr. Kirsten Sinema was, she brought with her, I think, a copy of the Constitution or something like that in order to be sworn in on a non-religious document. Of course, we've seen it before with Muslims taking the oath. Keith Ellison, as I recall, was famously sworn in on, and not officially, but again, ceremonially, on the Jefferson Koran, or the Jefferson, the Koran that is the version of the Jefferson Bible. It was his own personal copy that exists in the House or the Library of Congress. Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, I don't know what they did in those fake ceremonial swearing in ceremonies, but it doesn't matter. And anyway, so Marjorie Greene showed up, I guess, with a Bible in hand, insisting that their oaths of office had been improperly administered and that they were therefore not officially members of Congress, and offering them the chance, in her view, to rectify this if they would only agree on camera, on her phone camera, to swear in again, this time with their hand on a Christian Bible, which they may or may not have been willing to do. I don't really have any basis for knowing what they would think of such a request. I assume they would think, that's ridiculous. You're wrong. Get out of here. And it's offensive as well. But, who knows? Maybe Rashida Tlaib would have said, it doesn't matter to me what book you put in front of me. I've already been sworn in, and that's all there is to it. You want to have a fake event? If it'll satisfy you and get you out of my office, that who knows what she may have agreed to. Probably not. She probably would have had him thrown out. Anyway, it didn't matter because aides threw them out of the office quickly enough. But, she's a confrontational kind of person, apparently. And I don't know whether she would have, is she the kind of person who, takes pride in being a gun owner? Maybe, probably. Really no basis to judge other than that she's a QAnon nut from Northwest Georgia. So maybe, probably. But at that point, her being a nobody, very unlikely that Capitol Hill police would have allowed her to carry a weapon to those offices to carry out this stupid fake mission. But now, put make her a member of Congress, swear her in, and give her a pin, and it's actually something she or one of her guests would be able to do if she escorts them past security. She could certainly do it herself. And now, how quickly do aides from Tlaib and Omar's office throw her out if she comes in waving a pistol and insisting that they retake their oaths of office on her maybe fake Christian Bible? Well, I don't know. I don't know how different that situation is. And again, it's not completely out of the question. QAnon weirdos have shown up and made terroristic threats all over the place. And, of course, the FBI has to consider and has considered QAnon to be a domestic terrorism threat as a result. Now you're putting one of their own in Congress. I mean, it would be the way a right-wing Republican would view seating a member of Hezbollah in Congress. If they won election, you just got to put them there. So I thought that's something to think about, and it's a very real issue and a very real topic for discussion ahead of day one of the new Congress. But just procedurally speaking, it would be a very clear question of the privileges of the House when there's lots of precedent for highly privileged motions to be brought when they are questions of the physical safety of members of the House and the integrity of the proceedings of the House. I mean, really, it implicates the integrity of the proceedings as well, although that's a harder case to make outright. But physical safety, I mean, again, in addition to the fact that she can now bypass security for the most part wherever she wants to and bring people with her onto the House floor, remember, she's going to be wading into a House floor where the majority of the members are members of the Democratic Party. And she's apparently sold on the wacko conspiracy theory that those people, Democrats in the House, are the satanic, cannibalistic, drug harvesting pedophiles that need to be wiped out in this country. And it's the mission of the QAnon conspiracy believers to take out personally. Is that safe to allow her in? I mean, we most likely, I think, would find that she's full of it and doesn't really believe this strongly enough to take any action on it. And really, honestly, if the accusation, if the crime being accused here is cannibalistic, satanistic, child torturing pedophilia, how do you not take personal action if you're sure you're right? That's the real worry. The question is, how much of a true believer is she really? And we may be, in the end, glad for the opportunity to prove that she's not a true believer, and then what? Wait 2 years for her QAnon kooks at home to reject her in a primary in favor of somebody who is a true believer, and then we just have the same problem all over again. Honestly, truly, we really do have to spend some time looking into it. And I was reminded of that even more powerfully last night as I watched Gabby Gifford's presentation to the convention. And I didn't get to watch that in real time, but I watched the video afterwards. And of course the very striking images of her in the hospital and in recovery from her shooting. But again, reminder that we're not waiting to inevitably reach that point in our history where we finally do see a member of Congress shot by a conspiracy-addled wacko carrying too much weaponry. It has happened. And it's not that we have forgotten that this happened, but we sometimes need a reminder that this sort of thing has happened in the past, and we've already reached that point. And of course, our friends on the other side, not the other side of the aisle, but the other side of the ocean over in the UK will recall that Joe Cox was gunned down in very similar fashion. We're already well past the point where, yeah, conspiracy-believing wackos will show up and shoot members of Congress. What we've never gotten around to admitting is that there's a mechanism by which we can now envision, without it being all that far-fetched, that it is a member of Congress doing the shooting. And I guess if you if you're willing to open yourself up to throwing it way back in history, I mean, well, there was the caning of Sumner. Maybe that could have been a shooting, I suppose, but it wasn't. And so maybe we still think this. But there's been shootings on the House floor. That, too, has been a realistic, it's part of history. Back in, what was it, the 70s? Was it Puerto Rican separatists who managed to get guns into the House gallery and shoot down from the visitors gallery onto the floor, wounding members of Congress on the floor? So it's, they're not guarding against nothing or some ephemeral threat that never presents itself. People are crazy out there. But it's a very real possibility that we may be seating a member who's willing to either do that themselves because they feel compelled by their stupid conspiracy beliefs to do it themselves, or to let facilitate someone else doing it. They have sworn allegiance, allegedly, in their stupid videos to QAnon, and I guess all it really takes, what happens if whatever wacko freaks are behind these stupid, breadcrumb drops that QAnon believers think are coming from some high-level governmental insider? What happens if Q issues those instructions, or somebody pretending to be, well, they're all pretending to be Q, but pretending to be the person who's normally pretending to be Q drops, the info that, yeah, there are specific members of Congress. Maybe they even name them specific members of Congress who are the worst offenders. A sitting member of Congress who's likely a gun owner from a wacko district that believes in this stuff, how do they not, having taken the QAnon oath and all that, which is really the same oath that they take as a member of the House. And by the way, you should, I guess we should be listening on early in January on the 6th when everybody is it the 6th or the 3rd that they do their swearing in? Now I can't remember anymore for some reason. But when they all swear their oath, will Marjorie Greene shout out, "Where we go one, we go all" at the end of her oath? I don't know. But if she's the kind of person that takes these oaths, the QAnon fake oath, and then believes it and takes it seriously, and then QAnon drops, the information that XYZ members of Congress are the worst and need to get it first, what do we do? How long do you let her just walk back and forth unchecked? I don't know. A little worrisome. Okay, so that should freak you out good. There's a new addition to the reading that we could be doing about QAnon. I thought an interesting angle on this, although I don't think I'm going to spend the rest of the show reading this one. But, oh, look at this. I didn't even know that there was an article limit that you could reach for the New Republic. But I guess you learn something new every day. QAnon, the title says, is using the anti-trafficking movement's conspiracy playbook. Melissa Gira Grant putting this one together. I don't know how she pronounces that Gira middle name. Hope I haven't mangled it too bad. And that might even be confusing to you because you might have thought that wasn't it QAnon that originated the idea that government elites were involved in trafficking of children? Yes, true, but it didn't begin with them. There was, of course, Pizzagate, and that stupid theory actually kind of predates QAnon. QAnon has picked up that ball and run with it and just sort of adopted the Pizzagate conspiracy theory wholesale and gone on running with it. But even before Pizzagate, there was a weird underground conspiracy theory that sort of centered on the same accusation that government and Hollywood elites were trafficking in pedophilia and needed to be stopped. And it was the province of militia stuff before then. And recall, I mean, we heard some vague rumblings and read some stories about militia types like raiding southwestern desert wilderness camps that they believed were trafficking sites or somehow connected to the trade in child sex slaves, but were in fact nothing, and nothing existed there at all, and it was all just another one of their delusions. But this is sort of an interesting link to that as background, and I guess how it was that they came to pick up the ball for these groups and try and run it forward, and the nuts and bolts of it. And you might find it interesting reading. We may be able to make it interesting reading in the near future, but not a whole lot of time for touching on all of that today. Let's see. Other things that deserve attention that we can or should cram in. So much more to uncover from the Senate Intelligence Report, and maybe we can get to a little bit more of that. I should bring this finding from that reading forward. And I do believe that somewhere buried in pocket for even a week or two ago, we got the same information and I never made mention of it. Now it's being mentioned again by NBC News, Ken Delanian, bringing this point forward from the Senate Intelligence Report. And I think it is kind of old news, but just sort of hit the headlines a little while ago. In a entirely separate in entirely separate grounds for criminal proceedings, Bannon's name has come up in connection with criminal indictment in the context of what the Senate Intelligence Committee was investigating, not just the We Build the Wall thing. So the NBC News headline here, Senate committee made criminal referral of not just Steve Bannon, but also Donald Trump Jr., Jared Kushner, and two others to federal prosecutors. Now, if you're celebrating the Bannon arrest by the Southern District of New York and wondering how did that get past, how did they let that past the Attorney General and the rest of the DOJ, I don't know, but maybe it's to serve as some sort of sop or distraction from their obstruction of these charges against him for stemming from what the Senate Intelligence Committee found. The Intelligence Committee detailed its concerns in a letter to the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington, D.C. in June of 2019, an official said. So you must now be scratching your head. What is it that has justified burying this news for over a year? And the answer is nothing. It's just something that Bill Barr and the Justice Department felt like doing. The Republican and Democratic leaders of the Senate Intelligence Committee made criminal referrals of Donald Trump Jr., Jared Kushner, Steve Bannon, Eric Prince, already picked up in this other charge, and not arrested, but implicated, rather, and Sam Clovis, also, to federal prosecutors in 2019, passing along their suspicions that the men may have misled the committee during their testimony. An official familiar with the matter told NBC News. In other words, lying to Congress during the investigation. The officials confirmed reports in the Los Angeles Times and the Washington Post, and that must be what I had tucked away from before. Let me just open that one up and see. Is that... that's not dated so long ago, August 15th, but time is warping these days. Anyway, confirmed those reports, which mentioned that matter last week. I bet that's what happened. A criminal referral to the Justice Department means Congress believes a matter warrants investigation for potential violation of the law. The committee detailed its concerns in a letter to the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington, D.C. See, they should have sent it to the Southern District of New York on the premise that D.C. would never act. Back in June of 2019, the Post reported that the letter was divided into two sections. One named those suspected of making false statements. That would be Bannon, Clovis, the co-chair of the Trump campaign in 2016, and Prince, who they describe only as a private security contractor. A second section raised concerns about the testimony of other witnesses, including Trump Jr. and Kushner, whose statements were contradicted by Trump campaign aide Richard Gates, although it did not pointedly make a false statements allegation, the Post reported. The LA Times reported that the committee questioned whether Bannon lied about his interactions and conversations with Prince about that meeting in the Seychelles between Prince and a top Russian official. Prince told special counsel Robert Mueller's prosecutors that he briefed Bannon on the January 2017 meeting, but Bannon said the conversation never happened. A lawyer for Prince told the Post that if there was such a referral, it did not appear to have resulted in an investigation. There has been no public indication of any investigation. Lawyers for Trump Jr., Kushner, Bannon, and Clovis have previously denied that their clients misled the committee. So some question there about, well, why was there no investigation? Was there a good reason or only nefarious reasons? Well, maybe the indictment of two of those folks or at least indictment of one and implication of another in the We Build the Wall scandal might shake some of this loose. We'll see. Let's see. Other very interesting things. And let's, I still want to spend some time on what's happening with the Senate report and some of the ridiculous fawning that Donald Trump did over Vladimir Putin in his letters to Putin. But seems like it's less important than these things. And maybe let's throw two pieces together if we can. First, there was another report on the wargaming of electoral college and election chaos brought about by Donald Trump's undermining and questioning the integrity of the election and challenging everything that will happen about the election, the validity of ballots, the validity of the electoral college count, what have you. two treatments of that in the last couple of days. I know we've talked about the wargaming thing in the past. I think we had, David Frum weighing in on this. Here's one from Vox, Zach Beauchamp writing this piece back on the 18th. How to avert a post-election nightmare, and that sounds like a good idea. A war game that tried to simulate the 2020 transition, this time ended in violence. Not actual violence between the war gamers, but again, the war game showed that it would likely, the scenario of the election, devolve into violence. One of its organizers explains how to prevent that, and that's nice. This is a rather lengthy piece and an important one, but I want to at least bring to your attention the headline of the other, and we'll see what we can cram in here. Who brought this one up this morning? Karen. And did we straighten this out? Karen SF, are you in San Francisco, or is that your last name and middle initial? I can't recall how we settled on that. But Karen is a frequent listener to the show, and one of the many objectors to the unfortunate use of her name in branding annoying people around the country. We feel for you there. But pointed me to this Newsweek article, which put together by Tim Worth and Tom Rogers, and I think this is their second entry in this, a series of warnings about things that could go terribly wrong and what to do about it. Tim Worth, of course, a former senator and House member from Colorado, so I would say no out of left field crank, but now we're about to see QAnon members, so I guess that calls everybody into question. But this second effort here was interesting. How to defeat Trump's plan to overturn the election. And I think they take two slightly different approaches to it, but not entirely sure. Well, let's see. I'll read you the Vox intro, and we'll talk about it just briefly while we get ready to exit and hand things over to Justice here. Back over at Vox, Zach Beauchamp. Imagine that after a narrow Joe Biden victory in November's election, Donald Trump refuses to concede defeat, citing, among other things, alleged voter fraud and mail-in ballots. Imagine that this goes on for months, right up until Inauguration Day in January. Some closer read details from Worth, for instance. I think he was the one that floated the idea of sending alternative electoral college slates from some red states controlled in their state legislatures and their governor's mansions by Republicans, saying essentially, sure, Joe Biden won the vote in our state, but we allege fraud, and we're going to send a Republican electoral college slate alongside the Democratic one, and it'll be up to Congress to decide which vote to accept. All right. Beauchamp over in Vox is writing more about the wargaming that has gone on that I guess drove people to realize that this could be the outcome. Worth and Rogers are talking more about how to resolve this situation. You'll recall that if there are alternative slates sent, the Congress will have to decide which votes to count, and sometimes the process is very similar in many ways, or can be very similar to the process by which a tie in the Electoral College is settled, or an Electoral College count that has no one getting the majority of 270 votes that are necessary to win. Maybe just, we can't tie the thing, but we can tie it up and give no one 270 by disputing the validity of some of Joe Biden's electoral votes in these states where two slates show up. So Worth and Rogers suggest that there's a way around this, but we've learned that one of the real dangers is that the voting is done by delegation in the House, where they select a new president, and slight majority of the state delegations are dominated by Republicans because of their gerrymandering, etc., and at-large seats in very red states, things like that. But they point out that if the control of the Senate turns over, but with very specific goals in mind. 5 Senate seats. If the Democrats were to gain 5 Senate seats, so that they would have to be able to outvote Senate Republicans plus the person who would still be Vice President, Mike Pence. So you need 5 more votes, flipping 5 Senate seats and flipping some strategically selected seats in swing states. And I think there just 3 or 4 seats would need to be flipped, one in Pennsylvania. I think the at-large seat in, is it Montana that they name? And a couple of other places around the country. They have some very specific targeting about which seats would be flipped. It would take 1 seat in each of these very few states to be flipped, and some of them are actually gettable. That would change the control of the state delegation and change the vote such that Democrats would be able to overcome the strategic voting of Republicans and have a majority in the House and be able to defeat a majority or defeat the Republicans and have a big enough majority to do it in the Senate as well and thwart all of this. It's kind of out there in terms of long shots, in terms of that actually happening or it coming to that point. But the states and seats that they suggest flipping are not outlandish all by themselves. After all, it's very interesting, and we recommend you take a look.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Well, don't worry if you don't take a look, because I have a feeling that we'll want to take a look. Maybe tomorrow will be a good day for that. But if we don't get to it, at least you'll have those articles on hand. Now stay tuned for Justice Putnam to pick things up and pick up all the news that I didn't get to, including the big bombshell about Goodyear and Donald Trump stepping in it in Ohio.